You know that feeling when you hear someone chewing and it just drives you absolutely nuts? Well, for most of us, it's annoying, but it passes. But what if it didn't? What if that sound and a bunch of other normal, everyday sounds triggered something, well, something uncontrollable inside you? That isn't just being picky. That's a condition called misophonia, and it can turn the world into a really difficult place. So let's get into what this is all about.
Yeah, to really get what misophonia is, you have to go past the textbook definition. Just try to imagine it. A sudden, overwhelming wave of pure rage, or panic, or just disgust. And it's not because you're in danger, it's because you heard a pen clicking or someone breathing too loudly. This quote, it really nails the raw, visceral experience of it. It's a full-on emotional and physical storm that you just can't control.
Okay, so building on that feeling, here's the official expert consensus definition from 2022. And the keywords here are decreased tolerance and specific sounds. This is super important because it's not a general sensitivity to all noise. That's a different thing called hyperacusis, where all loud sounds are painful. No, misophonia is a laser-focused, powerful, negative reaction to very particular triggers. And that reaction isn't just in your head, it's emotional, it's physical, and it makes you want to act.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to dig into what misophonia is and what it feels like. Then, we'll look at the crazy, intense response it triggers in the body and mind. After that, we're diving into the brain to see what's going on. And finally, we'll talk about the search for treatments and what the future of research looks like. All right, let's jump right in. The word misophonia literally means hatred of sound. And get this, the name only came about in 2001, but the experience, oh, that's been around forever. For people who have it, these specific sounds aren't just annoying, they feel like a personal attack, like an invasion. And what's so wild is that the triggers are usually, well, totally normal sounds. We're not talking about a fire alarm here, it's the sounds of everyday life. The biggest ones are often oral and nasal sounds. You know, chewing, sniffing, breathing. Repetitive stuff like keyboard tapping or a clicking pen can also be pure torture. And it's not even always about sound. There's a visual side to it too, called misokinesia, where just seeing someone shaking their foot or chewing their gum can set off the exact same intense reaction, even if you can't hear a thing.
Okay, so let's talk about the moment a trigger happens. And this is so important to understand. This is not a choice. It's not someone just overreacting. It's an instant, automatic chain reaction that takes over their brain and their entire body.
We're not talking about being annoyed here. We are talking about the body's fight-or-flight system getting slammed into overdrive. Emotionally, it's this spike of anger, disgust, or even panic. Physically, your heart starts pounding, your muscles get tight, your body is literally preparing for a threat. And that leads to some pretty clear behaviors. You either have to get away, you have to make the sound stop, or you have to block it out. But the cognitive side is maybe the worst part. You feel trapped, you feel helpless, and then comes this wave of guilt or shame because you know the reaction is over the top, but you absolutely cannot stop it.
And you might be thinking this is some super rare thing, but it's really not. Recent studies suggest that somewhere between, say, 5 and 13% of adults might have misophonia that's clinically significant. Meaning it's actually messing with their daily lives in a big way. That's millions and millions of people who are dealing with this every single day. Which, of course, leads to the big question, what is going on in the brain to cause all this?
So yeah, that's the multi-million-dollar question, right? Why would a totally harmless sound cause such an extreme reaction? This is where the science gets so cool, because researchers are really starting to connect the dots on what's happening under the hood.
It's the central puzzle neuroscientists are trying to solve. And it's not about the ears. People with misophonia usually have perfectly normal hearing. The problem isn't in receiving the sound. It's in what the brain does with that sound once it gets it, how it routes that signal to other parts of the brain.
Okay, so there have been two main theories about this. The older one, the neurophysiological model, basically said it's like a faulty wire, a super strong connection between the brain's hearing center and its emotional alarm center, a conditioned reflex, basically. But there's a newer theory that's really gaining ground called the action-perception model. And this one is a bit of a game changer because it helps explain stuff the old model couldn't, like those visual triggers we talked about. This model says the sound takes a weird detour. It doesn't just go to the hearing part of the brain, it actually lights up the motor cortex, the part that controls your movements. It's like your brain is trying to simulate the action that's making the noise.
And this lays out that new model perfectly. So first, you see or hear the trigger. Then, your brain's motor system basically mirrors the action that's causing it, like the muscle movements of someone chewing. Now here's the key part. In people with misophonia, that motor signal sends a faulty, super strong message to a part of the brain called the anterior insula. Think of the insula as a hub for your gut feelings and emotions. This signal makes the insula go haywire, and it basically hits the big red panic button, telling the rest of your brain's alarm system to launch a full-blown fight-or-flight response. This theory is so powerful because it explains why just seeing the action can be a trigger. It feels so invasive because your brain is literally mirroring that action inside your own head.
Okay, so knowing how awful this can be, the question has to be, what can we do about it? The hunt for effective treatments is a huge area of research right now, but we have to remember, the field itself is still really young.
And we have to start with a dose of reality. This quote is from a massive review of all the treatment research that was published in 2023. And the bottom line is, there's no magic bullet. There's no one-size-fits-all cure or treatment for misophonia, at least not yet. That shows you how much more we need to learn, but it definitely doesn't mean there's no hope.
So this table gives us a really good snapshot of what's out there, and you can see right away the level of solid scientific proof is all over the place. The one with the most rigorous backing right now is a special kind of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. It's been tested in a randomized, controlled trial, which is the gold standard. Other things, like tinnitus retraining therapy, which was first made for ringing in the ears, people who use it report feeling a lot better. And then you have some medications and newer therapies like ACT or DBT that look promising in individual cases, but we just don't have the big studies on them yet.
So what is this specialized CBT all about? Well, it's not about just forcing you to listen to horrible sounds. No way. It's more like a toolkit of coping skills. You learn how to shift your attention, how to use relaxation techniques to calm down that fight or flight response, and how to challenge the negative thoughts that pop into your head when you hear a trigger. It also uses something called counter-conditioning, where you carefully pair a trigger sound with something positive to try and rewire that association in your brain. And maybe most importantly, it's about education, helping the person and their family understand what misophonia is and isn't. That alone can be a huge relief.
Now, I really want to pause on this point, because it is so important. A lot of people think, oh, just face your fears, listen to the sound over and over until you get used to it. Well, for misophonia, that kind of traditional exposure therapy can actually make things much worse. The experts are very clear on this. It can be harmful. Think about it. If your brain is already screaming threat, forcing it to endure that threat just reinforces the idea that it's dangerous. That's why these specialized, much more careful approaches are absolutely crucial.
So where are we headed? Let's look to the future. Even though there isn't a cure today, the science is moving forward incredibly fast. Researchers are building a really solid foundation to better diagnose, understand, and hopefully treat this thing much more effectively.
And there's a pretty clear roadmap for what needs to happen next. We need to create treatments that are based on what we're learning about the brain, like that action perception model. We absolutely need more big, well-designed clinical trials to prove what really works. We need to keep making therapies like CBT even better. And we need to properly study which medications might help. And finally, we need better, more consistent tools to diagnose misophonia and track its severity. That's the key to making all the future research stronger.
And the great news is, this isn't just a wish list. There are dedicated organizations like the Misophonia Research Fund that are putting real money behind solving these exact problems. They're funding the kind of cutting-edge research we need on genetics, on brain mechanisms, on new therapies. That's what's pushing this field forward so quickly.
Okay, so let's wrap up with the big takeaways. What do you really need to remember? Number 1, misophonia is a real brain-based disorder. It's not a choice or someone being difficult. 2, the reaction is an involuntary fight-or-flight response. It's a reflex. 3, we don't have a cure yet, but there are management strategies like CBT that really do show promise. 4, the science is new, but it's moving fast. And finally, and this might be the most important one, if you know someone with misophonia, a little bit of empathy and understanding goes an incredibly long way.
And I'll leave you with this last question to think about. Misophonia is more than just a disorder. As we keep digging into it, what does it teach us about the incredibly complex dance between our senses, our brains, and our most powerful emotions? It's a fascinating look at just how deeply what we hear and see is tied to who we are.